mentioned using kind of formats from historic books and sort of taking elements from historic approaches to explaining things as a way of sort of layering in credibility, I suppose, with your...
It's also because I haven't found a style yet. I'm desperately trying to find a style still. I've been doing this 10 years. And I really envy some illustrators. You go, oh, I know that's so-and-so's work, you know, because you just know from the style. So I'm trying to find the style. So I keep looking everywhere, and just it's like trying to catch a rainbow sometimes, you know. So I love trying different styles to try and find one that fits. I've not found one yet that fits, because this is not my... The book I did before this was A Monster Calls, which is very dark and miserable and gritty, and that's me, you know. I'm not good at this cheerful stuff. So yeah, I find it... It's, do you find it easy and stuff? I find it really difficult, really, really hard. I don't feel like I fit. It's like a square peg in a round hole doing this sort of thing.
I think, well, particularly as well being self-taught, I think I learnt a lot by looking at other people's work, and particularly historical work and art history was really important for me. And, you know, I have, every time I pick up a paintbrush, because I do love oil painting, but there's a big kind of backlog to oil painting, you know, there's all of that stuff and, you know, what's been done before. And I think every time I'm sort of doing my foundation course maybe, and if you like a certain genre, you know, you want to maybe have a go, and I sort of think, can I do that? Maybe that's sort of similar.
All the time, because it's the most inspiring thing is seeing other people, like seeing your work now, it makes me want to go and draw again, you see.
We should just swap.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And you see other work and you think, oh, I really want to be able to do that. And you're kind of stuck with what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just every time, like going to museums, you see other artists' work, and that's what gives you the kick up the backside. And other illustrators, you know. I've often talked about an illustrator called Alexis Deacon, who's just amazing draftsman. And you can tell, it's like Olivia has got this lovely natural light, and that's, to me, is the most motivating thing. It's just jealousy, to be honest. I'm motivated by jealousy. So that's the thing that you just think, oh, I'd love to be able to be like that. So, but it's nice because you never feel. I was listening to a talk by a guy he makes Japanese woodcuts for prints, and he's in his late 50s, and he feels like he's still really at the beginning of learning the process. And I feel like I'm still, you know, still just breaking into this. You've been doing it longer than I, so I don't, you know, because I had years in the wilderness. But how are you illustrating? Well, paint art. You're an artist, really, not you know.
Probably 20 years or so, because I trained in theatre actually. So I came from somebody said I have a checkered career. I wasn't quite sure how to take that. But, I think it sort of means a jack of a few trades, and I do feel, you know, this frustration. I know people, particularly in earlier years, you know, and what's really apparent in the current exhibition at the moment is the skill and literally the lifelong dedication that went in. Often artwork was created by monks, I guess, and you've got an uninterrupted amount of time every day to dedicate to perfecting an art. And, you know, from the grinding of pigments to, you know, the end result and the labour involved, which is something quite devoid in our, you know, in our life today. So you feel like I feel like I'm always, particularly with etching, it's quite a sort of specialised technique.
Craft, isn't it?
Yeah.
It takes years to judge, and even on a daily basis it varies according to the temperature of the, you know, there's all these variables in etching that you can't control, which I like. But do you find, I mean, personally, I think I'm a printmaker that's not printed in 20 years. But you print make all the time, so I don't know how used to those variables you get, how much you can control them. Sorry, I'm dying to know more about printing. It's not the forum, is it?
An initiated Olivia. I wonder if you could explain how an etching is made. How does that happen? So the etching is the sort of black, I don't know if we can get any of the images back up, but the kind of black line that you'd have seen in Olivia's drawings that has these amazing textures.
I don't think there's no pictures of the actual printing plates, which is quite an interesting process to see. I don't know if many people here do printmaking, or are there any printmakers? Yes, please. Can someone explain?
Is that dry point? No, there's a thing called a remora, and it's one of my favourite illustrations in Olivia's book.
I don't know if anyone can see that.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, I don't even know how to use that screen. Unlike Jim is amazing at drawing and all other handcrafted media, but also a digital genius as far as I'm concerned. So this is, like Jim, I love to look at the earlier printed books and all sorts of reference material. And so this creature, which J.K. Rowling says is a remora, is I did sort of start to look up things to see if this is something that is existing already or if it's something that she's created. And I quickly came across the Remora, which is a shark sucker fish. And so my take on this is it's from the Pacific Ocean. So I wanted to do one of these sort of landscape scenes, or a seascape in this case. And on the bottom there is the detail of the actual creature. So that was created as a copperplate etching, which is basically you've got your copperplate. You then normally in etching you would heat the plate up and you you roll onto it a thin waxy layer of something called a hard ground, which is what I tend to use.
Yeah.
And when that's cooled, you're able to then, without too much elbow grease, basically draw your line of what you're wanting to create on the plate. And where possible, I would do that on location, if there is a location that I can go and draw. In this case, it was more sort of fictitious, but when you've got your image as you want it, you then are putting it in a solution of either nitric acid or ferric chloride. Sorry, this could get really technical. I'll try and give a little. And then you are judging the process by which, how deep you want the lines, how dark you want the image. You can do interim stages of stopping out and getting incremental sorts of etches.
And Olivia, can you see what you're doing when you're drawing? Can you see the line? It's not like drawing ink, is it? Where it's pretty, what your hand is doing is pretty apparent to you.
Well, you can, if you've got a very dark brown sort of ground on the plate, or some people would burn it, and if they're more patient than me, and to make it really kind of black, so you've charred it with a candle. But you can obviously catch the copper. When you expose the copper, it is that lovely shiny copper colour, and that's what's then etched into the plate. So you can see it, and then what I quite like about it though is it does, despite the copper prices, if you forget about those, a bit like working for J.K. Rowling probably, you've got to sort of forget about this enormous this enormous pressure, which when you are hid in your studio most of the time, you can choose whether you show your work or not, depending on whether you're pleased with it. Whereas when you start a project like this, you're pretty sure that a few people are going to look at it.
Quite a lot, millions of people. Yeah. I wanted to ask you both about that actually, about when you get the call, and what's the kind of raw material that you get, and how do you prepare yourself for that, or does somebody else help to prepare you for that kind of attention on your work, and that kind of I guess the Harry Potter's loved by millions of people. There's a kind of the world is conjured up in millions of imaginations. I just wonder how you.
I stressed about it. I mean, really didn't. My partner's here. She'll tell you. I didn't sleep well for well over a year, and I have panic attacks each night. So about 2 or 3 in the morning. There's something about the night time you lose all perspective. Mm-hmm. Have terrible panic attacks about the pressure of it, and you just be saturated and just wired. Really, really anxious. But you think it's going to be a disaster. And just before we published the first book, I got in touch with Alison, who's more than an agent, it's just something far more incredible than that.
I think Alison is the answer to your question, actually.
Yeah,
Alison Eldred, and all the people at Bloomsbury. That's how you get through it.
Because I tried to get the book. I said, look, can we just pull? I'll give all the money back. Just pull. It's going to be a disaster. Don't. But I think Alison just picks us up off the floor again and again, doesn't she? Because everyone thinks that illustration you sat at him like this. And we're miserable people, aren't we?
Not always.
Sorry.
No.
You said that you'd seen the films and you'd read the books and you were there with everybody else, but Olivia, it wasn't the same for you.
I went to do an interview on Newcastle Radio last week with the lovely Lisa Shaw, and she asked me the question, were you a big Harry Potter fan when you got the job? And I said no. And then I realised that probably sounded wrong. And I said it wasn't that I wasn't a fan, I just wasn't involved at all. Like I said, my only brush with fantasy, which I didn't class as fantasy, was Tolkien. So that was and then probably there were things on the way as well, which sort of helped, go into this job. But I just count myself as a very literal artist. So, but I love doing things that I haven't done before. Well, I don't know if I do love it, but every job I do seems to be something I haven't done before. And I think, why am I doing this? But then you come out of it and think, well, I hope I've learnt a bit more. And also done a good job, maybe. But I think you never feel that you've done enough. I don't think anyone. I think if you feel like you've done a fantastic job and you're congratulating yourself, you're probably on the wrong way down a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, you're just rubbish. No, I The hardest thing is the finished printed book. It's almost like this. I can't explain it. I can't look at it for the first few months, and then the British Library exhibition. It's really nice to do it, but at the same time, there's a Joseph Wright Derby painting on there. I idolised Joseph Wright Derby when I was young because he's from up the road from me, and someone putting your work on display is like, it's just terrifying. You know, do you find that? You just see all the mistakes. As soon as you walk in, you just think, oh, I need to redo that. I wish I could take the paints in and go into the exhibition. So, yeah, correct. Do you find that?
I don't know, I just find it really exciting, and also probably just look at the other work. I look at your work.
Yeah, I do. That's good.
It's interesting that you mentioned time, Jim, because there isn't. That's one of the constraints. You know, when you're illustrating a book, it's not like you're doing your own series. There's a very specific time when you have to finish, and all of that. I just wonder how that influences the way that you work, because it seems that your process is quite labour intensive. You're making these set models, buying up cotton wool, and doing all of that side of the work. And I just wonder how you structure that.
Well, I never get anything right the first time, so I have to redraw it again and again and again and again. So for every illustration in the book, there's a ton of stuff in the bin, and every time you go wrong, it's the worst. You know when an image goes wrong, not you, but it's just ruins your day. You just can't think about anything else.
It's hard because I think what's really difficult is I'm aware that what I do is a real privilege, and I wouldn't do anything else. I think probably most artists are the same. But you do go through there's lots of other things you might like to do, but you are kind of stuck with this job, and it's a huge privilege. But at the same time, you have these battles, and whilst you know that they are just a storm in a teacup, because it is, it's just you, and it is just a book at the end of the day, or it is just a painting, and it's not a life or death situation, but you still really go through the mill.
Yeah.
Which can feel a little bit, what do you say, sort of gratuitous.
Yeah, and you sort of dungeon by it, aren't you?
Self something, but you can't get out of it, because I think whatever project you're involved in, but particularly for you, this huge amount of narrative that you're working with is very, very different. So whereas for me it was page by page, and there is no real continuity. It's just the alphabetical order that is holding it together. But I think, it is your world while you're doing it, and there's a lot of conflict.
Because we've spoken to each other while we've been working on stuff, and it's quite nice to, when you get illustrators together, you're all moaning about the same stuff, deadlines, things like that. Because deadlines, because I see myself as a commercial illustrator. I don't know if this is right, you as an artist, is that right?
Jobbing artist, I think. There's very dirty words in this contemporary conceptual art world, but yes.
It's a whole other evening of discussion. Illustration versus art, who will win?
I don't know. It's that thing for me. It is a real privilege, and so therefore you feel like you need to enjoy it all, and obviously do your best. But in wanting to do your best, there can be a lot of anxiety and a lot of ups and downs, and I don't think you ever feel you've completely attained it. But in contrast to you, I think I'm really impatient, and if I don't get it right first time round, I'm sort of stuffed, basically.
Really?
So, particularly with the etchings, like you're saying, I'm not really good at reworking, so I think if you can, it's just crossing your fingers, I think. Well, for me it is.
There's always a better option, and every time you never actually finish something, you just think there's a better one around the corner.
Yeah.
And that's what tears me up. If you give me a year to do a book, I will use every single minute, every hour of that year to work on it until I'm absolutely in bits by the end. And if you give me a week to do it, I'll fill the week. That's the thing. Sometimes a short deadline is actually good for you in some ways, because it makes you make decisions earlier. Whereas if you have more time, you just use that time to try out more opportunities and stuff. And I find that's what grinds you into the ground sometimes. It's yourself, really. I think it's your own worst critic most of the time.
I think so. Yeah.
But it's not like I'm hacking coal down the mine or anything. I'm not saying
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but you care about it. You really care about this, because you get emails from